If I were to ask you, do you think you can change your spouse? You probably would tell me no, we can only change ourselves. And that's probably mostly the right answer. But if we're honest with ourselves, we also do try to do things to get our spouse to change in a relationship, whether it's something we don't like or maybe something that we feel like is causing us hurt or frustration or tension in the relationship. And honestly, influence should be a part of any marriage. We should be open to each other's influence. Our problem is our approach to influencing usually leads to conflict, disconnection, and frustration in the relationship. So in this video, I want to give you 3 keys that you need to understand if you hope that your spouse would be open to your influence in the relationship. That's today on RelationShots. Hey, welcome to RelationShots. If this is your first time hanging out with us or you have not yet downloaded your free guide to intimacy, you'll see a link in the description area below. This guide will help you evaluate 4 areas of intimacy in your relationship: emotional, physical, spiritual, recreational, and how you can improve connection. Also, if you're struggling with communication, and if you're married, you're probably struggling with communication, I am doing a live free masterclass right now on communication that's an hour long on Thursday nights. You can check the link for that as well and get registered. All right, let's talk about influence. How can we influence our spouse towards change and resolve conflict in the relationship? Let me first see if I'm even in the right space. So tell me if you can relate to this. Your attempts at getting your spouse to change or receive your advice or influence usually results in them getting defensive and minimizing or dismissing, not hearing what you're saying, or them turning around and telling you all the things you need to change as well in the relationship, or them getting mad and stonewalling and giving you silent treatment for a few days, or maybe they actually do nod and smile and act like they acknowledge and are willing to do it, only to have them do nothing. Am I in the right place? All right, if that's you, then what I need to help you understand is there are some keys if you want your spouse to be open to your advice and influence in helping them change in some areas that they may need to change in the relationship. If you have not been having any luck getting them to change, I think these 3 things will help you. So I'm going to give you 3 keys that will help you influence your spouse, which in turn will help resolve conflicts and create the kind of relationship that you want. Key number 1 to understand is that no one is right. Yeah, so here's the deal. In all arguments, nobody is actually, quote, right, which also means nobody is wrong, right? In every argument, there is no such thing as absolute reality. There are 2 subjective realities: your subjective reality and your spouse's subjective reality, right? Because when a conflict or argument starts, what happens is we experience feelings. And these feelings that we experience are generally triggered by something that happens in a relationship. And these triggers often find their roots in things that happen in previous relationships or in our childhood growing up, right? So maybe there's an interaction in your relationship and you feel unappreciated and hurt by it. Those are your feelings. And that was triggered by the fact that you were not included in a decision or in some situation. And that has also happened to you in your family growing up when your opinions and your perspectives were not valued by your parents. And so you can see that in this one interaction in your relationship, there is a lot of things, feelings and triggers and past memories and situations all coming in and coloring the interaction that you have with your spouse, which means that your perspective on what just happened has been colored by all these different things, which means it's probably not absolutely true. And that also means that your spouse's perspective is subjective based on all those things in their life. So we've got to be willing, if we're going to have any luck at any chance resolving conflict and influencing one another in a relationship, we've got to at least believe on a foundational level that there is no absolute reality in any argument, in any interaction, in any conflict in our relationship. There are just 2 subjective realities, and there's probably aspects of your subjective reality that are accurate and less accurate, and there's probably also aspects of your spouse's subjective reality that are accurate or inaccurate. And we tend to have this perspective that I'm convincing you of my rightness, of my perspective in the situation, which there's probably something off in mine, there's probably something off in yours, there's probably some truth in mine, and there's probably some truth in yours. But if we can't first start with that foundation, we're going to have no chance of actually influencing our spouse. A second key, if we want to influence our spouse, is they need to feel understood. Human nature is such that if we don't feel understood, we have a real hard time receiving advice from somebody that we don't feel understands our perspective and where we're coming from, right? And so if you can't first let your spouse know that you understand their perspective, even if it differs from yours, even if you may not completely see it or agree with it, but that you understand where they're coming from, because if you don't, they're not going to be open to the advice that you're trying to give them. And if they feel judged, criticized, or condemned, they're going to have a hard time also receiving from you any advice that may have some truth in it of some areas that they may need to change in. So if you want your spouse to be open to your influence or change, they first need to feel like you fully understand them. The third thing is they need to feel that you accept them. Once again, if they do not feel that you accept them or like them for who they are now, they're probably not going to be open to change. They're going to feel like, I have to change in order to get your acceptance, and that's ridiculous and I shouldn't have to do that, right? So if they feel attacked, if they feel criticized, if they feel judged, instead of being open to your influence, open to your attempts at getting them to change, they're going to be defensive. And defensive people tend to dig their heels in, and when you dig your heels in, you are not in a posture where you're willing to receive or be influenced by another person. That's not somebody who is going to be open to what you have in order to try to get them to change in an area. So to put all this together, here's our foundation. The foundation is we first have to come to the reality that your truth is not an absolute reality. In any argument, in any situation, in any conflict, in your marriage, there are two subjective realities, and we have to be open to the fact that there are aspects of our reality that are accurate and inaccurate, and aspects of our spouse's reality that are accurate and inaccurate. And so we can't be in this position of, I feel like mine's right and theirs is wrong and I got to convince them. We've got to be open to the fact that we may be wrong in some areas and they may be right in some areas. If we don't have that foundation, we're already off base and we're not going to receive from one another. But after that, we need to make sure they feel understood. If they feel understood, they'll be more open to the advice or influence we're trying to give, and they need to feel like they're accepted right now for who they are and we actually like them. Because when you feel accepted and you feel liked, you are open to the influence of another person. So if you are able to implement those three keys, I believe your chances of influencing or getting your spouse to change are greatly increased. And if you don't, you're probably going to get more of the same. You're going to continue in gridlock, continue in the same frustrations, stay in the same cycles, and neither one of you are going to be open to changing the relationship. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Drop a comment below. Again, if you are feeling stuck and you can't communicate, why don't you join me for my live masterclass on communication. I'll give you 3 keys that will help you immediately communicate better in your relationship. You'll see a link for that below as well. That's all I got for now. Till next time, see you right back here on RelationShots.